All right, it is officially go time. Super excited. I love seeing everyone jumping on here. I love seeing, I gave my shout out to Mark Doucette and Jerry and Frank Turco. And the reason I do that, and the whole reason why I wanted to start this series, y'all, and if you didn't tune into the first one, the thing I talked about the most is just thinking about my life on the personal level. And I love using this expression where I've stood on the shoulders of so many giants in my life. There's been so many people that have mentored me, so many people that helped shape me into the person I am. And the whole reason I wanted to start this series was to give back. Like, this is my time to hopefully mentor some people. I see some of my athletes on this call. I see Jasmine out there doing her thing, playing some pro soccer. Like, all this is about standing on the shoulders of giants. Because I'll tell you right now, we cannot go on this journey by ourselves. We need to lean on each other. We need to link up. We need to come together in our circle and stand side by side every single day, because that's how we're going to get better. And I'm super excited for this conversation today because we're bringing in one of those mentors that has really influenced my life, and that's the guy I see to my left, Brett White. And it's funny, before I give him the floor. Brett and I met just what 2-3 years ago, Brett, and I read Brett's first book, Behave. And if y'all know me, if I read a book and I like it, you're going to get an email from me. It is like 100% guaranteed. That's how I know Jerry Lynch and how we've connected. Like, you will get an email from me. I see Levi laughing because he knows it's 100% true. But again, I reached out to Brett, and it was like instantaneously. Brett was like, "Yes, I got you. Let's have some more deeper conversations." And that grew into Brett and I doing a global summit together just about a year ago. And it's really been cool having him on my side. And Brett wrote an endorsement for my book, and that just meant the world to me. And I think today's topic is so relevant because what we're going to talk about today is what Brett calls the beautiful struggle. And we want to shift perspectives today. We want to talk about why losing can teach us more than winning ever will. And two things I wanted to bring up before I turn it over to Brett. The first thing I want you all to start thinking about, and think about today's society. We're always chasing after the outcomes. I feel like we've shifted more to this win at all cost mentality. You look on social media, everyone's trying to boost up their stats on social media. They're trying to paint this image where everything is perfect and everything's going well, but that's really not reality. And one thing I shared with Brett before you all jumped on, I just wanted to talk about real quick. Let's look at the four outcomes of sports. Because again, sports is so unpredictable. It's chaotic. We never can really control it. So the four outcomes, I want you all to think about this real quick. The first two outcomes are pretty obvious. We can play our best and win the game. Would you agree with that? That's
Mhm.
outcome number one. We can play our best and actually win the game. Outcome number two, we can play our worst and lose the game. We see that time and time again. But the next two, I want you all to think about these next two. Outcome number three, we can play our best and lose the game. I know we've all been there. We can play our absolute best, but then like something happens, some crazy occurrence happens, and we lose the game. And outcome number four, we can actually play our worst game and win the game. So think about that. Those four outcomes, those three and four, we can play our best and lose, or we can play our worst and win. I think where we struggle sometimes is we're just chasing the outcome. We think we can control the outcome. And then if we win, then we think we've made it. We think we've arrived. And a lot of times I feel like we get complacent, right? There's a great quote from the legendary John Madden back in the day. John Madden said, "Winning is the best deodorant because it covers up all the other stuff." And how often do we fall into that trap where it's like, we win, let's just settle. We're not learning, we're not growing because we think we arrived. And what Brett is going to talk about today, he's going to completely shift our perspective today because Brett has an incredible story about how his team came together through adversity, through resilience, and they never gave up on each other. No one left his organization because they created something that went beyond the scoreboard. They actually created a culture that mattered, a culture that said, "I see you for who you are. And I think that's the most important thing. I want everyone to hear that. It's about who you are and who you become. Think about that first Zoom call if you were on when we had Dr. Aaron Almer. That's what it was about, is understanding our identity beyond being an athlete, our identity beyond just a outcome, and knowing who you are and who you want to become. That's the most important thing we can do in this journey. So again, I am super excited. I am humbled. I am blessed. Again, this is another one of my mentors that has helped me out so much. So I'm going to turn the floor over to my guy. We all going to say happy July 1 because Brett's coming in from Australia and it's Wednesday morning for him. So Brett, I'm going to give you the floor.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Yeah, it is good to be here. It is the 1st of July, Wednesday morning. Dial it in from Sydney, Australia, and it is just amazing to be here. I just wanted to sort of just quickly speak to the elephant in the room. Feeling a little bit overawed with all you people from the US, in light of the US Socceroos World Cup game last week. So, don't rub it in too much. But we're both still alive, so that's the main thing. And the Aussies will keep winning, and we might see in the grand final. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? I think I'm wishful thinking there from an Australian perspective, but hey, I have a lot of hope. So yeah, I mean, I love loving the World Cup, of course. I wish I was. A lot of my mates are actually over in the US at the moment, going to games, causing some Australian havoc where they can. They've been on TV and news reports and everything. So yeah, Australians have a way of being noticed. The Aussies cheering on the Aussies. So, but yeah, it is great to be here. It's been great to journey with Matt over the last number of years. Just working together. And Levi, I've connected with you a few times. It's great to see you. And I know I've never met Jerry, but I'm good friends with John O'Sullivan and the Way of Champions. And yeah, so lots of great people on board. So it's great to meet you all. Hopefully you can understand my Australian accent and go from there. I want to share, I guess, a little bit of just I'll share my screen, which just, I guess, will just give you a little bit of insight. Hopefully you can see that. So yeah, I did. I released this book, The Beautiful Struggle, this year. And I guess it's come out of two stories. I just kind of want to frame it a little bit. One story for me is the last 15 to 17 years I've been working in Cambodia in Southeast Asia. I'm the director of football for a not-for-profit that runs football programs, soccer programs for kids at risk, homeless, disadvantaged, underprivileged young people in Cambodia. And so I just, some of my experiences and journey with this idea of the beautiful struggle have been sort of forged, I guess, on the dusty playing fields of Cambodia. And then my context in Australia, I'm a soccer coach. I was coaching first grade Premier League here for the last number of years. And the team that I was working alongside last year had an absolute shocker of a season. And I also want to make sure that you understand that I love to win. I write a book about what losing can teach us, but I don't actually like losing. It hasn't helped me enjoy losing. I still love to win. And everything that I do ultimately is about building a culture that I believe leads to better results. I'm also involved I have my own business here in Australia as a leadership coach. I mentor, run a lot of leadership development programs, and a lot of the work that I do in the coaching space for sport is connected to the work I do in the leadership space because I see them very aligned. So I guess there's so much I could share today. I want to just share a little, probably three big ideas, and I really want to get your interaction, your thoughts, your questions, as much as we can going through. I mean, I think one of the realities, when you look at it, is that most of us in sport, whether we're players, parents, or coaches, experience loss. More of us probably experience losing than those of us that win. And I think it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about enough. and the lessons and the learning, and how do we utilize those experiences. In Australia, one of the things I've noticed in youth sports in particular is kids being taken out of teams that are not winning to be put in a team that's winning, because parents or the athletes themselves don't want to be a part of a losing team. And I get that to a degree, but I also feel that kids miss out on actually building resilience, how to overcome setbacks, how to build something strong within a culture or a team that maybe isn't winning on the scoreboard, but is winning in other areas of life. And so that picture you see on your screen is a bunch of the girls that I work with in Cambodia, part of a girls' junior team that I help develop, and I'm in Cambodia 3 or 4 times a year, coaching the coaches, do a lot of coach and player development. And this team of young girls started playing in tournaments, and for the first 3 years, I think they won 2 games. The first 2 years of them playing together, they did not win a single game of football in 2 years. You got to understand, a lot of these girls come from, very impoverished, underprivileged backgrounds. They turn up to training in bare feet. They don't have the resources and the facilities that we might have in our context. But one of the things that constantly surprised me was their attitude and heart and mindset around playing together. For them, it was about belonging. It was about being a part of something. It was about community. And, they would turn up every week to training, running out of the bus with smiles on their faces, and they would give 100% every week. And they were learning and they were growing. But the way they framed losing taught me so much personally. And then, it was 3 years in, and they played in a tournament in Thailand, in Bangkok, and they actually won the tournament. So 3 years later, they got a result. And I guess the big idea for me in losing, or understanding what losing can teach us, is that the scoreboard tells us the result, but not the story. And, some people will look at that picture and go, yeah, there's a winning team, but they don't know the story. They don't know the 3 years of not winning a game. They don't know the battles, the struggles, the resilience, the setbacks, what actually led them to building a team and a culture. I mean, you would have, and this is a small little tournament, but they felt like they'd won the World Cup. They were that excited about that win. And I guess this is that team stayed together, their mindset, their attitude. And I guess the big learning for me is understanding our identity beyond the scoreboard. And I think that what I see a lot, particularly in youth sports, but in a lot of contexts, is how people's identity is formed by result. And so if we're winning, then I'm a winner. And so I really want to challenge that way of thinking, because if we connect our identity as an athlete or as a team or even as an organization and as a club to the results that we get, our identity will get lost. We'll get broken. We'll lose our way, because our identity as people is more important than the result and the outcome. I believe that the higher level of relationships that we build, the greater results that we come. A little framework that I use. Who are you when you don't win? One of the things that I think losing reveals is culture in a team and in a player and an athlete. And so I believe in building identity, which, from my experience, leads to higher performance, which gives us results. And what I see often is this turned around on its head, where people are, someone's talking, where people aim for or push for results first, that's their focus. And I think, if we want to learn and grow and develop identity that goes way beyond the scoreboard, we have to start in that space. Helping athletes, helping teams, helping coaches understand who they are and not just what they do. And so for me, the ultimate way of developing great culture in team is to really work on identity. Who we are. Who are we when we don't win? What do we look like? How do we respond to adversity? Who steps up? Who steps back? What do we need to be doing as a team to really be who we can actually be, and then get the results that we want to get? Cambodia did not teach me how to win. It taught me why losing matters. It taught me that the world's obsession with the scoreboard is often pretty shallow compared to the deeper work of shaping character. It taught me that coaching a losing team is not about fixing people, but seeing them, loving them, and believing in them when the world overlooks them. I have been deeply moved and challenged by my work in Cambodia with young people that are so deeply grateful to turn up and have an opportunity to play. And coming from an Australian context, the things that we take for granted, the gear, the facilities, the opportunity. I've learnt so much from working alongside, some of the happiest young people that I've ever met that don't have anything. And as I said, hadn't won a game in 3 years, but still were some of the happiest young people I'd ever met, which kind of, does my head in a little bit because it spins everything around and backwards. So I'm curious, just to hear from some of you real quick, what happens when identity becomes attached to results? I think about your context. Do your conversations after sport focus more on performance or character? One of the things I learnt with my young fella who played high level rep football, soccer here in Australia, was to build his character. And how do we do that? How do we help athletes separate performance from worth? What do you tell yourself after a mate? Give me some of your experiences or words of wisdom, or how you see some of these things that I'm talking about. Love to hear from some of you.
I'll just say this, when I'm coaching, I always try to really focus on the process and not the product of the win, and I really want them to have a self-worth about themselves. So if they have a self-worth, then it helps whatever learning lesson we have a little easier. It's always about learning and growing in the sport, and just helping us to be good people as well. And but I always tell them it's not a matter of if we're going to have adversity, it's when adversity is going to strike. And how do we handle that? How is our character going to handle that? And to me, that's how you make a champion. If you ask me how you handle adversity, and it's going to happen, and how we respond to it, and how we build them up as coaches to be able to handle that, is when you're going to find success. And this is my 28th year doing it, and I'm still a
Right.
work in progress, but I'm blessed to have Matt with our athletes, and he sees it because he's in the dugout a lot. So he knows we stub our toe every now and again, but we know that it's in a safe place, and we really have a love for each other. And so we can always continue to have that meaningful conversation to help them grow. And remember, process over product. Our identity, our self worth is going to help us in the long run.
Good. Love it. Thanks, Frank.
Hey, Brett, let's get Kevin. I see you typing in the chat. Kevin, can you jump on it and share what you're putting down?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kev.
Right. I've seen it happen when you put all your identity into winning. It doesn't become as much fun anymore. The athletes
Sure.
get burned out. They don't really see any goal, anything in there. If you come up short, and you gave your all, but you didn't win, and that's the whole basis upon what your grade is. You don't feel there's no self-esteem there. I also remember seeing there was a great video out a couple years ago when Mike Krzyzewski retired. I don't know if everybody saw it when he was they paid tribute to him, and he just talked about the end, like all his players, all the people that were around him talked about him, and he said as much as he'll be remembered for the gold medals, the championships, his big point was the lives he touched. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a real touching video. He talked about the relationships. They go way beyond the championships he'd won.
Yeah. No, it's good too. Yeah. I mean, I think we see it though, don't we? We see it in a lot of contexts where the focus is on result, and we see the impact that can have. I see it particularly in youth sport, but even at a senior level, coaching senior men's, when our emphasis and drive. Look, we want to win. There's no doubt about it. There's no one sitting in this in this chat that doesn't want to win. That we want to win, we want to get outcomes, we want to get results. But yeah, again, as you say, like when we attach who we are to that, I've seen athletes bomb out, drop out. The whole mental health stuff, particularly in elite sport, is massive. And it's all connected to performance. So yeah, I think it's a massive growing and increasing challenge, particularly in our modern countries that we're a part of.
Hey, Brett, I know I can do this because we talk about this all the time. I would love to hear from Jasmine. So Jasmine's currently playing at the pro level. Like Jasmine, talk to the group real quick about how you separate now that you're playing at the pro level, Jazz. How are you separating the results in your identity?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for first off I want to say thank you for putting me on the call. And yeah, I guess I'll just start off with saying that everything's a learning experience, right? I think sometimes you need to take the small wins and just live in the moment. So for me, I've gone through adversity time and time again, and I realized that in order to succeed or get to where you need to where you want to get, right? You just got to take the small wins, one step at a time. Those it doesn't dictate your whole character. Sports doesn't dictate your whole character, but sometimes just live in the moment and know that it is attainable and that it's tangible and you can reach these things. So I think separating character from performance, right? For my character, I realized that it's just one day at a time. So when I was younger, right, my dream has always been to play professionally, and not everyone can achieve that type of dream, and for me to be able to achieve that dream is, monumental. It's amazing. But I also realized that the sport isn't everything. So I would just say live in the moment. We always have standards and expectations that we want to reach, but just take those one step at a time. That's all I can say. Just live in the moment and know that the small win that you had yesterday, it could, lead to an even bigger win tomorrow. So those are my words of advice.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're hearing that, the whole focus on the learning. I know, I think Dr. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, if you haven't read it, it's a great book and resource to read, but she talks about the fixed and growth mindset, and the basic difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is the focus on learning, improvement, and growth. And so they see setbacks, challenges, adversity as opportunities to grow and learn and become better. Whereas the fixed mindset doesn't take the risks, it doesn't step in, it doesn't take critical feedback. And so developing that growth mindset as coaches and athletes, to me is really important part of that process of understanding that learning journey, because we can learn from everything, right? And so being open to critical feedback, looking at mistakes, looking at losses, looking at and what can we learn from it, grow from it, so that we can become better and improve, is really critical point of difference that I see in athletes that do go on to be successful and those that don't. A lot of the time, it's the mindset. It's not the skill on the ball. It's the thinking in the brain. So yeah, I'll keep going. Just want to share a couple of other things. One is, I really believe one of the keys, I love this picture, because it just shows to me this idea of belonging and how important it is. I think often, particularly in team sport, that, that real deep sense of belonging is the foundation for greater performance. I think what keeps young people or teams coming back after disappointment is the team and the culture that they belong to. And the story of my first grade boys, this is them, Shire Premier League, first grade, 2025. 8 straight losses, 14 season losses, 2 wins all year, and then we got relegated out of the Shire Premier League first grade at the end of the season. It was a disastrous season. It was brutal. It was public. It was hard work. And as a coach, trying to inspire and motivate a team that just couldn't seem to win on the park for a number of different reasons. It was really, really tough on me, and it was tough on our team. We'd had a couple of reasonably good seasons, and then everything last year just fell apart for us. And what surprised me, I think, in that season was almost the opposite of what I expected. It's kind of like the more we lost, the stronger we became. Again, not in results or on the table, but in the heart, in the character, and in the capacity. I think the thing that really stood out to me with this group of players, as Matt said at the start, is I expected most of them to want to leave at the end of the season and go on to play in other first grade teams. But unbelievably, the majority of the players in that team wanted to stay in the team to rebuild and to get ourselves back into first grade, which is what we're working on together this year, mid-season now. So it really surprised me in a lot of ways that it was that high sense of belonging and the way that they built character and heart. They just worked harder. Yes, they were disappointed, but at the end of the season, when we were talking about the season to come, I honestly expected I was going to be having a lot of conversations with players that wanted to exit, go to other first grade Premier League teams. There was a lot of offers on the table, but the majority of our players decided to stay together. And that really, for me, was I guess I feel like as a team, we built this level of resilience, not in isolation, but we chose, to walk through this together. And the mateship and the connection and that sense of belonging made a massive difference for us moving forward. We introduced a bunch of different things during the season. One of the things we did was this little RGB review. And so it was very simple and very quick. Results, what happened, just the facts, the growth, where did we improve, the small things, and then the belonging. Where did we see connection, courage, and trust? And we used to use this in our first training session after a game. And as I said, 95% of those games were after a loss. And we really wanted to focus on growth, supporting each other, how we improve the small things, and really calling out the team where we saw, that level of connection, that level of courage, and that level of trust in the group of players. So we introduced this in mid-season, and it sort of became a bit of a pattern for us in our first training session after the weekend's game, and really became sort of a strong part of our culture about who we are and what we do. For me it was a good little tool that we used because what it helped us focus on was recognizing the result, but then also looking at where did we improve, what are the small things we're doing well, and then connecting that to the team mentality about who we are as a team, the connection, the courage, and the trust. You hear kids quitting sport, and I'm really, again, not just for youth sports, but there's some sort of questions there. If someone's got some words of wisdom or some experiences to kind of share with the group, that'd be great. What environments create belonging? What can coaches, how do we unintentionally create judgment instead of connection? What can we do to help someone feel included? And I believe the greatest teams aren't built on talent alone, they're built on belonging. And that's connected to the identity and the culture. Thanks, Jerry. I see that hand.
I love what you're saying. I don't want to talk. I just want to listen. But I have to jump in here because that word belonging, I'm an implementer. And someone says, what a wonderful word. Put it on the wall. We belong. And then I say, how do we go from the wall to the ball? How do we implement it? And Levi, if you will unmute yourself there, I'd like to I see you have a Way of Champion shirt on, and Levi, I know, is a well-trained Way of Champions guy, and he's been marinated in what we call the river effect. And I'm just wondering if you could help me start the conversation on implementing belonging through dousing people in what we call the river. So why don't you take that from there, and I could sort of jump in, and I'd love to hear from you.
Wow. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well,
So
this
the
is just a
river.
test. This is just a test to see if your license is valid or not.
Levi almost logged off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
noticed that.
Sorry, I lost my connection. No, so the river is such an important acronym that Jerry developed, and it really stands for we want to make athletes, people, our families, our coworkers, we want to make them feel relevant, important, valued, empowered, and respected. Right? We want people to feel that, and I always share with people when we talk, like I'm 38 years old, I'm a grown man, and those are the things I want in my life, right? Those are the things I want from my boss. And if I'm not feeling those things, I'm looking for other work. So when I see here on the discussion, why do kids really quit sport? I was just talking to my neighbor outside. She's got a 9-year-old boy who loves baseball. All he wants to do is play baseball. And you should hear the horror stories about this child's experience. And sadly, I think he might hang it up at 9 years old. He's not going to play anymore, right? Because he's not feeling those things. And there are so many ways to make people feel like just Jerry did. He asked me to come off mute. Jerry's written 20 books. He could have said this is what it is, but he asked for my opinion, which makes me feel important. And the last thing I think I'll share with this is that concept Jerry, came up with the river. I work a lot with youth sport athletes. We've got a lot of, possibly parents on the call or people who work with young athletes, and we might think, yeah, this is great for youth athletes. I've been lucky enough for the last 3 years to work with professional athletes. And these are people who are gunning for each other's jobs. And hey, if you don't perform, you're out of here, one of those things. And I think the number one thing I do is try to use the river effect. It's not so much the tactical and the schematics and the here's how you do this or that. Like, yeah, that's important. We talk about that stuff. But each and every day, it's treating someone like a human being, and just making sure they feel like you are important and you matter to this team. And it's just amazing to see that at such a high competitive level, how that's just as important as you think it might be at the lower level.
Well, yeah, I'm going to coattail, like I said, upon your brilliant statement because it's really helping me to focus. It's not only in the sports realm, but it's in the realm of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can go to Afghanistan or Iran. I don't recommend it today, but you can go no matter where in the world, and you could ask people, raise your hand if you don't want to feel relevant, important, valued, empowered, and respected. I walked into a hall of 1,000 coaches in the middle of Iowa in the dead of winter this past year. I asked that question to 1,000 coaches, and not one coach raised their hand. To pick up on what Levi was saying, the river effect is just an acronym, but the concepts are solid. We all crave, we don't just want to feel important, we crave it. You're 38 years old and crave it. I'm a few years older and I'm still craving it. Why? Because feelings equal function. How we feel, how people make me feel. When my wife Jan makes me feel important and relevant, I go the distance. I'll sweep the floor. I'll lick the floor of the dirt if that's what it's going to take because I feel that good. Your athletes go the distance when they're feeling these feelings because we know science is now proven that feelings equal function. Imagine that. Another way of putting that is how an athlete feels is how they're going to perform. The most important thing is, and Levi, you could jump in here too, because I know you have some things you could say here, but the most important thing is I actually implement it. There are not just words. I'll tell you face to face as an athlete, I'll pull you over and say, you know what? You're important to me and this is why. Or I'll go to somebody else and say, I believe in you. That's empowering them. Or we value on you on this team. When you show up, we all feel this heightened level of energy. Our emotional level goes sky high when you're around. I respect everything you do. I watch you all the time as your coach, and I love to see you do what you do. You set the perfect example for everybody else. So I'm taking the word river, and when I walk into a room, whether it's a classroom, a boardroom, a locker room, a toilet room, it doesn't matter. What matters is the people that I connect with, I will connect more deeply and they will go the distance if I'm willing to help them to feel like they belong. And I love that word, Brett, so much. And I'm so glad I don't see many people emphasizing that enough. But anyway, Levi, whoever wants to take it from there, I'm talking too much right now.
Well said. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah.
Well, the wisdom in the room is always good to hear. That's for sure. It's
Yeah,
interesting. One of the
one
things.
thing, Brett, one thing
Go.
I heard when Levi was talking about that first question, why do kids really quit sports? And a few of us, we have a mutual contact. His name is John Kessel, legendary volleyball world, sports performance. And John always challenged us. He would say, you never want to be a kid's last coach. Think about that. We never want to be a kid's last coach. And again, that goes back to what Brett's talking about. What is the environment we're creating every single day for these kids? And again, we see it more and more. I mean, what's the number? I think, Levi, you can correct me, but 75% of our kids are quitting sports by the age of 13 because we're not paying attention to the environment. We're getting caught up in the wrong things. And now kids are walking away. And what Brett's talking about and what Jerry was talking about, what Levi is talking about, and everyone on this call, what we're talking about is the power of sports and how it can translate to everything in life. But we have to create the environment that our kids want to crave. They want to step into the river. And the coolest thing about a river is you never step into the same river twice. We get to create a new river every day for our kids, a new environment every single day. So the challenge is for us as coaches or as parents who are listening to this, and even our athletes, because you can create this environment for your teammates, is pay attention, be mindful of what we're creating. We don't want our teammates to walk away from this environment. We want them to remember it. And again, like Brett says, it's not about the trophy. It's not about the championship. It's about who we all become. That's what we're going to remember. 15 years down the road, I'm going to remember how Brett made me feel, how Jerry made me feel, how Kevin made me feel. Working with athletes like Jasmine, Jocelyn, and Cheyenne, I see you on the call. You'll have all made me better. So again, this is something we have to do together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things. I always ask for feedback from my players group at the end of the season around my coaching, around a whole bunch of different. I love to get critical. I love to get feedback that challenges me, and I think again, just as a side note, I encourage coaches when I'm doing coach development is to get that feedback, not just from people above you, but from the team. I think feedback is one of those things that helps us learn and grow and become better. But two of the pieces of feedback that I got at the end of last season that I guess meant a lot to me. One was my ability to hold belief for the players and the team. Even if they didn't believe in themselves. And I realized that I have capacity. In maybe it's my experience. I'm just turned 60, so I've got a few runs on the board. But the ability to be actually able to hold belief for an athlete or a player or a team, and even if they don't believe in themselves, long enough so that they will then hold it themselves. And so, that was some feedback that I got from a couple of our players. It really meant a lot to me. And the other one was my intentional one-on-ones. And so I was very intentional about one-on-one conversations with my players, with the athletes. And that would be at training. Sometimes that would be a separate conversation, and sometimes it would be before games. I would isolate players that I, saw either struggling or they had a hard week, or things were going on rough for them at home, or whatever's going on in their world. I was aware of it because of the relationship that we had. I would intentionally spend 20 to 30 seconds with that player and just speak some belief and some hope and some love into that player, and just to see the difference that belief and connection made in players. And kind of segues into this idea of words build worlds. And this has really challenged me. I can get frustrated. I can get emotional as a coach, like all of us. But just recognizing that my behavior and my words have massive impacts on how my athletes actually react and perform and what they see and how they feel, like what Jerry was talking about before. If my players can feel seen by me, and not just as a player but as a person, their performance will lift. And I think the power of the first kind of book that I wrote a couple of years ago that Matt mentioned, called Behave, is really just about the behavior that coaches, I believe, need to develop and model to develop their athletes and their teams. And of course, words only work if they're carried by behavior. And so my team, they watch me. If I carried frustration, I could see they would shrink. If I carried doubt, they lost conviction. If I carried tension, they tightened. But if I carried belief, they lifted. The responsibility on me as a coach of human beings, not just performers or not just athletes and not just players, and being mindful of that. I mean, these are adult men between, I think our youngest player was 17 last year and our oldest player was 33. So it's quite a massive range of ages. As Jerry said before, and Levi and Matt, is they want to be seen, they want to be known, they want to feel that you actually give a stuff about them as a person, not just as a player and what they can do for you on the park. And so I really created a culture of belief. Even when we're losing every week, we still believed. We still had belief in each other. We still had belief in what we were doing. We still had belief in it as a team. And I think, again, that's part of the reason why they stayed, is because of the belief in each other that a lot of them had not experienced in other contexts or in other teams. Another little tool that we introduced during the season was this 30-second circle. So if we conceded a goal in a game, we went to this 30-second circle where it was about what we saw, what we're changing, and then that connection and conviction. That setting belief in a game. Whereas what would often happen, if we conceded a goal, everyone would walk with their heads down back to their starting position in soccer. There was no connection, no communication, no belief. And so we introduced this 30-second circle sort of mid-season. And again, it just became one of those things. And, sadly, in some ways, we used it a lot because we conceded quite a few goals during the second half of the season. But yeah, this idea of, how do we use this moment to build culture, belonging, belief for the next moment. And it made a massive difference, to us as a team moving forward.
Greg, can I just
Yes, please.
you mentioned the word love.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned that, it sounded real to me. And it wasn't just a lot of people are throwing that word around loosely. And I'm just wondering what you have found in your coaching with these youngsters, different cultures. How do you communicate that love to them? Because it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that in order for me to believe in myself, I have to feel loved. And in my environment, whether it's my family or my immediate peers, I try to create that love so that they believe in themselves, which is really what my coaching is all about. And so I'm just wondering if you could help us to identify some
Yeah,
things you might do. Yeah.
it's a great question. I think holding the belief for my players is a way I would demonstrate love, that I believe in them and I would communicate that and language that, even if they didn't believe in themselves. I think connection and listening to the players is, again, I'm involved in their life as a person, not just in their performance as an athlete. And so, I know what's going on with their lives, if they're working or if there's stuff going on at home or they've got a sick mum or whatever. I'm very aware of that because of the relationship that I have deliberately and intentionally built. I would say intentionality and consistency. in who I am to them. You know, a lot of them don't just see me as a coach; they see me as a mentor, as a support, you know, as a second dad almost, you know, in that context. So just being real. You know, I focus on relationships over results. I focus on the person before the player. Um, and I genuinely, as you said, it's real. I do love these guys. I love this team. I love who they are. They're different. Some of them are, you know, harder to love than others, but you know, I do. I love them deeply, and I demonstrate that
Well,
in the way I treat them.
if you go back to your picture, the first thing I noticed was your face and how you were looking at the athletes. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of love in that face, and they see that first. And
Yes.
you know, it's sending the message. So our body language, how we look at people, how we talk, you know, to remember to smile once in a while, even if it's not in your playlist, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, helping our athletes feel like their voice matters is another thing that I've really been deliberate and intentional about. You know, when always give opportunity for our players to communicate, to share their ideas. We do a feedback session in our first training session of the week, and every player knows that their voice matters, that they matter to the team, and we have very strict core values that the team develop themselves about who we want to be known for, what's important to us. And most of them connect to culture, identity, belonging, safe place. And that really helps shape that, you know, that community and culture of love and connection. Super important.
Thank you for that.
This is a little progression, you know, that we again developed. You know, we start with belief, because if I hold that belief for someone and believe in them, believe in the team, it actually then builds courage. And you know, when you're in a losing environment, it takes a lot of courage to actually step up and keep fighting and keep going. And so we really focused on that belief in each other, courage, and then that kind of led us to the insight of the learning, because I feel like without courage, you're not open to learning, and then that would move to conviction and ultimately to action. And so, yeah, I mean, we would get comments from other teams about our conviction, our attitude, and you know, we've played some really good football, but we just didn't win many games. But we would always get, often other coaches would compliment our team on their attitude, on their commitment, on their courage, on their determination. And yeah, it was, you know, as I said, it was a tough year, but but we learn a lot, and the learning for me ultimately is priceless. So just a couple of other things just to think about as, you know, as I kind of wrap up my, I guess, input. You know, what language dominates your environment? What messages about success and failure are you unintentionally teaching kids? What language is killing belief? What language builds resilience? You know, I'm so big on language and behavior being consistent, and that's what builds great culture. So yeah, anyone have a question? I'd love to. You can either put it in the chat or just go off mute and yell it out. I'd love to hear any questions or more thoughts from anyone, and then I'll hand back to Matt in a minute.
Matt, I'm sure you'll do a plug for the beautiful struggle here, but I just wanted to take a quick second to give it a 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10. I just strongly recommend it to anyone on this call, any leader, any coach, any parent. It's just I'm trying to I couldn't really come up with all the it's just a great reminder of what we need to hear. It's practical. I could go on, but I just wanted to give my endorsement for the book if you haven't read it already, because I know Brett probably wouldn't do that himself. But Matt, I'll let you go. But just awesome job.
I would also, and I'm looking at it right now, Donnie, you mind sharing? Because because Donnie just read it as well. Because Donnie kind of went through a little bit of a season. So Donnie, tell the group like how it helped you out.
Well, you calling me up, Matt. I appreciate that.
Oh, I got you.
No, so I work at a boarding school, so a college prep school, and just going through a couple of your slides there, just and the book itself, it just hit really close with what I went through this past year, and to just kind of give you a little bit of context, because I could speak on it all day, is that we went 12-12 this year and finished third in the state, which is a really strong private league school or league, and every team has 10 Division I kids on it, and it's incredible. But we ended up, and I play anyone, anywhere, anytime, and I get caught up in the winning thing a lot, right? And for a couple different reasons. One, because one is retention, right? The retention rates are super important to schools, especially of our size. And then two, the recruiting piece. Like the more you win, the more the guys come, right? And so those wins matter. And when the wins matter, like they do, and everything's online, right? Like Max Preps and Instagram and all this stuff, the marketing stuff will eat you up, and I'll be the first one to admit it. It eats me up, and it gets me, right. And so I've had to do a lot of soul searching, and to be honest with you, I'm super happy with the success that we had. We played like 10 of the top 20 teams in the country, the Lawrencevilles, the Landons, which are all huge private wealthy schools, and we're 180 boys, which isn't much, and we punch up, and we punch up hard, and so we lost a bunch of games by one, overtime loss to IMG, one goal lost to the Hill Academy, and the boys sometimes like you could feel it like bending, like almost breaking, and luckily we didn't. And we somehow, some way started to hit our sail like towards the end of it and finished third in the state, which a lot of people were like, holy crap, like we didn't think you were going to get there. And I had to change. I had to, like, at one point I had to change some things up. Like I was just like, the language, the outcome just was no longer what it started out as, right? And by far the most talented group that I've had yet here at Blue Ridge School. And thankfully finishing out as strong as we did, and now having read your book and like finding every little piece, I feel like we just did a summer, and stop me if I'm talking too much, but we just did an event. So all the seniors have graduated, right? We do our graduation, and then like a week later, I was really worried about it, but I'm like, we're going to do a tournament. We're going to go to another tournament. Let's play more lacrosse, right? And I've never seen happier kids and happier families. And I feel like we're on track, and I'm not beating myself up as much. And so just going through your book, it hits super close to home with last season, and I love all the coach reflection questions, and I'm just like, oh, that connects, oh, that connects, oh, that connects. So more of a point than a question or anything like that, but that was kind of my year in a nutshell, and I appreciate you for giving me something that feels like I'm not alone in this crazy sports world, right? So thank you, I appreciate it.
That's great. Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Great.
yes, sir.
And I think sometimes that's just that what you just said at the end, that we're not alone. I think sometimes we feel very isolated as coaches, even sometimes as athletes, in that space, particularly if the season's a tough one, because all we obviously ever see on social media is the teams that are doing well. They don't see the struggle, and so I guess for me, that's the frame, that the struggle is beautiful too, and you're not alone in that. So yeah, it's good.
Man, I'm all fired up. And Donnie, thanks, man. And I'll tell you one thing about Donnie. Donnie does wear it, like he wears it. And we had so many conversations, but just to watch, like, I mean, it goes back to Brett's word, courage. Like, Donnie had the courage to look at himself first. Right. And I think that's what we all have to do is we look at ourselves first. It comes back to this self-awareness piece, and going back to Brett's idea of it's about identity. It's not about trophies. It's not about outcomes. I mean, heck, we're going to lose 90% of our games, right? That's just the reality. But what Brett's talking about is just shifting our perspective. And again, I love this question. This came from you, Jerry. Is Jerry would always challenge us. If we lost, you would always say, well, why are we a better team because of last night's result? Because of last night's loss, why are we a better team? And instantly we're all able to change our perspective and see it as it wasn't just an outcome. It's like, no, I got better because of this loss. I was able to expose some gaps, or we had to figure out ways to come together more. So for all of us on this call, and Brett just said it, like, we're not alone. There's 28, 30 people on this call. Like, we are all connected now. We all need to lean on each other, right? We need to establish that courage. We need to challenge each other. And then ultimately, like Brett was talking about, we have to have that unconditional belief in all of us, because together we're always going to go that much further. Sometimes we feel like we're going to go fast alone, but I'll tell you right now, we're going to go further together. And so with that, I know we went a little overtime, but I mean, I was fired up. I love this conversation. Brett, I can't thank you enough. Again, I mean, 3 years, in 3 years, the impact you have had on me has been tremendous. And now you get to share with this group. I'm super excited. I hope everyone look up Brett. Reach out to Brett. He'll help you. Read his book. Like, if you have any questions, hit me up. I can get you all connected. But I can't thank you enough, Brett. This was an amazing session. I can't thank you all enough for jumping on. And we're working on one for next month. I'm trying to get Trevor Reagan from the Learner Lab, and we're going to dive into the science of learning. So I appreciate y'all. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Matt.
Thank you.
Great to meet everyone. Thanks,
Appreciate
James.
it.
Thanks,
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you.
guys.
Good
Thanks,
to see
Brett.
you, Jerry.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Brett.